Okay. So, wanted to just do a little, I mentioned, I think, glance meditations before, and, the purpose of them, these review meditations, about them being used to be able to, have a whole map of the path. It just helps us know where we are, where the topic we're working on fits, so it's just a way of helping us connect the dots as we make progress, of understanding how the pieces fit together and things. And at first, of course, we don't know how to connect the dots. So it's just a matter of getting, familiar with the steps of the path. And then as you become familiar with it, it will start to fall into place. And since you become very familiar with the whole scheme of things, that just helps us. It's sort of like, we all rely on GPS these days in our cars, but sometimes it's really helpful if you look at the map before you get started, because if you get distracted, or if your GPS doesn't tell you, turn right on 12th or something, and just says turn right, you may lose confidence that you're going in the right direction. So it's helpful to have a sense of the whole picture, and then of course following the order so you can actually get somewhere. So and you can also think of it as like painting a picture. So I use this analogy a lot. So you make a sketch of the whole scene first, and then you fill in the details. We don't, not we, because I don't do anything artistically, but painters do not, finish one corner of their painting. It's all of its details without touching the rest of the canvas. No, it's like they work their way out and back in and out, and, so it's really, it's about, you just have sort of a idea of things, and then you get a stronger understanding, and then you come back and kind of put that within the whole picture, and then you go, oh, I need to do this and do this, to get it just as you want it. So it's a matter of being comfortable with what you don't know, always. It's not like until you're Buddha, there's going to be things you don't know. So, just being comfortable with what you don't know, but understanding that if you keep doing the practice, keep thinking about, keep developing your wisdom, it will fall into place. If the path has any validity, it will fall into place eventually. And we can see the benefits to our own mind along the way. So then with analytical meditation, these are the steps. So the first step is you have to pick an object of meditation. So you might pick compassion, you might pick anger, you might pick emptiness, you might pick interdependence, you might pick impermanence. So you pick a topic. If you're not familiar with the topic, with this object of meditation, then you want to create a list of the points you want to contemplate. Now that list may actually just be one paragraph of a text that you're just using, that you've read recently and you want to think about more. But a lot of the meditations we give in this course, that you get as part of your handout, so to speak, are list of points to contemplate. And so if you're not super familiar with one, you need the list. You're not going to be able to rely on your memory until you get familiar with it. And then you actually sit down to do the meditation. So then you want to, of course, assume the position. You want to get in your comfortable, relaxed meditation posture and whatever place of meditation. This is if you're doing a formal meditation. This is your daily practice session, you know. And then you generate a motivation and an intention. Any questions about that? The motivation and intention? Okay.
Hello, yes.
Yes.
So, okay, so the last slide about the you know, get a list. So that's like what you sent, I guess. Like we were confused. I don't want to go back. I didn't want to bother you. So it's not you read it first and then you put it aside and then you ponder it during meditation. Or you read it and think while you're reading it, like that. Even is that okay?
Yeah, I think you can, until you're familiar with it. You know, you can either you read one point and then you reflect on it. And when you become familiar with it, you can even have much shorter phrases. You know, you've sort of got an orderly progression through it.
So in my mind, because I don't know anything, is I thought it would be, I just picture meditation. You have to put your eyes glazed to the floor and just, you know, think, you know, to me it was like interrupting I guess I'm confused, you know, that I guess.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's okay.
No shame. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, this from confusion comes wisdom. So we want to not forget that meditation, purpose of meditation is to become more familiar. So sometimes what we want to become more familiar with are what the teaching suggests that we adopt. You know, like we adopt a compassionate, patient mind instead of an angry mind, you know. So we want to read up on that and we want to get familiar with what the logic is. Why does it make a difference? Why will I be happier if I give this up or adopt this, you know? So it's about getting familiar with the teachings because, you know, this is based on the assumption that if we could just do what we wanted to do and become enlightened, we'd already be there. And we don't know what we're doing and we make lots of mistakes. And the Buddha is saying, I can explain how you can get there to reduce your suffering. But it's not enough just for him to tell us. We have to internalize these teachings. We need to check them out with our experience. We need to go beyond the knowledge, but we need the knowledge so that we have something to check up with, you know, to use in our experiment with how does this work with my mind and how do I find, you know, now that I've been looking at it this way and I try it out, what do I find out, you know?
So it's okay to like have it in your hand and read it and then stop and just think and okay. Because then I was thinking if you read it before, then you're going to be, was that what the word was? Or then you stop?
That won't help.
Oh, okay.
So it really is about becoming familiar. And that's why having guided meditations or taking turns reading a meditation out loud, you know, since you have more, you know, since you're not alone doing it, you know, you have that opportunity. But it's just, but eventually, of course, you want to, because the purpose of the guided meditations is to really become accustomed to the method. Because eventually, as you get more familiar with the teachings, you'll be reading something and you'll go, I don't know about that. Or, yeah, that seems really true to me, you know, and then you just bring that one little thought to your meditation cushion and you think about it. You think about what's your experience been. You think about circumstances where, you know, if you had thought of this, you may have acted differently, or how would it have turned out, or whatever. You start thinking about the logic. Because we're trying to see if what we currently believe is an obstacle to our happiness. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure.
Excuse me, Venerable Tendron?
Yeah.
Judy has a question.
Okay.
I'd like to share that we did a meditation on equanimity. I think it was last week. And you used the friend, the enemy, and the one I really don't care too much about, you know, doesn't make importance. But that meditation was easy for me to follow, and it was, you know, it was an object of meditation, and it gave me something simple to be able to use over and over again, and as simple as I could take it into the supermarket with me.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, that's right. I mean, that's the purpose of these, you know, these guided meditations. It's a, you know, but eventually, of course, you're going to want to use your own words. You know, you're going to come up with your own reasons from the real world, your real world experience. And then you can reflect on that, because it's not enough to have the knowledge. We want to be able to change our mind and our habits. You know, so that's a process of recognizing, oh, look what I'm doing. I have a really silly example. Today, but right before the teachings, I brushed my teeth. And in that moment, I thought, why am I brushing my teeth? You know, and I went, oh, because of habit. Because I always brush my teeth before I go to a teaching. You know, and I thought, well, then I'm not going anywhere. But it was just this recognition. I was just observing the habit in action. Because I could have chosen, well, I don't need to do that. I'd like to spend this 5 minutes doing this instead, because my breath's not going to bother any of you. You know? So, but it's just recognizing, we want to observe ourselves to realize this is what it means to just follow habit energy. You know, it's just something you do and you don't think about it. And so in the beginning, or with anything we're trying to maybe change the energy around, you know, we want to be observing so that we can choose before following that habit energy. So it's actual, you know, we become familiar with the choice. And so that's just something you can do all day long. It's just notice, why am I doing this? You know, just to look. So we can, you know, see when we're just following habit, and there's nothing wrong with following habit. You know, all we're trying to do now is just, you know, learn how to reduce the habits that we find out don't do anything for us, and increase, you know, the likelihood of habits that do help us. You know, so it's all about, we want to create habits, and we want to, you know, so it's not, there's no problem with habit, but it is a problem if we're not choosing which habit we follow. Does that make sense? So yeah, I think the guided meditations can help. Some of them are complicated, and so you can just, you know, you read one part of it and you just look at that, and then maybe you want to read up on the subject more. But eventually it just really helps to, you know, we don't want to stop. You know, it's like we're doing the same meditations. I've been a nun 20 years. I'm still doing the same meditations I've always done, plus some new ones. But it's just like, you know, you want to internalize these things. You know, you want to develop the faith of conviction. You know, not just, oh, because the Buddha said so. You want to really, and this takes cultivating it, contemplating it in the mind. Okay. So then we generate our motivation and an intention. And then we want to think about each point deeply. You know, we really want to pause and think about it. And this is where we use our own words, you know, and we may not have any yet. So you just keep going with, you know, the guided meditation. But the purposes of it is to think about it. You know? And then you relate each point to examples from your own life. So you want to use reasoning and apply your reasoning with your experience to see if there's any, you know, if anything resonates with you. If it does, well, first, you want to clarify the meaning of each point until understanding arises. This has two aspects. One is you want to make sure you understand what the teachings say. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to believe them. You don't, any of that. But you want to make sure that you're investigating what's actually the teachings are, We can't practice the path if we're wrong about what the path is. Does that make sense? Then we also, we don't want to just memorize the words that somebody else uses. We want to make sure we understand, we have a meaning for these words. Now, this all takes time. And, when we come back to the same process again and again and again, and we'll have different understandings. Just like when you read a book, a really good book, and then you read it again 10 years later and you appreciate it in a different way, the Dharma is a lot like that. And then when you have, you feel like you have some clarity on what the meaning is, you want to, really keep thinking about it until some sort of experience arises, till it resonates with you in some way. And that's when you want to pause. That's when you stop thinking about it, stop reflecting on it, and you just hold that experience. For me, it's the aha moment or the surrender moment. Oh, that's so true moment. So, but whenever you have that feeling, whether you're reading a book or you're doing a meditation, it's really helpful when you have some sort of experience of it, of whatever that means. It's different for different topics, but it's a deeper understanding than just knowledge. And we want to rest in that experience.
So just to be clear, at that point, you're switching out of analytical meditation into the other kind.
Stabilizing meditation, single-pointed meditation, concentration meditation. Now, the things that stabilizing meditation and analytical meditation have in common is that you have an object you're focused on. So while you're, focused on equanimity, if your mind drifts over to, some other topic, you want to bring it back to equanimity. So it's just, it's a different kind of experience. But this is why, in this tradition, we emphasize this alternating between analytical meditation and single-pointed meditation or stabilizing meditation. Because we want to stabilize our understanding so we don't forget it. So it becomes part of who we are, how we think. So it changes, some habit that we have that's not helping us. So it's pick an object, make a list of points to contemplate, set an intention, think about each point, try to relate it to your experience, clarify the meaning, experience the conviction. When it resonates with you, stay there. And then when it passes, go back to contemplation. So this can happen even through the day. You can just be noticing something, and you'll think, oh, there it is. I'm putting friend, enemies, I'm putting a label of enemy on this person just because right in this moment, I don't like what they're doing, Or this person brought me, I don't know, a present at work, you know, and in that moment, you know, they just feel like one of your closest friends. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean. So it's being, you know, and then in that moment you realize, oh, I'm discriminating between people based on what they do for me, based on whether they help me or harm me. Now we do have to assess actions, but we don't want it to interfere with our appreciation that it's a sentient being who wants happiness and doesn't want to suffer. And that's what they're trying to do. And they may not know what they're doing, you know. So we don't have to judge the person by an individual act or many actions. You know, we can keep our discernment about the action itself, whether it's beneficial or not beneficial, or you don't know, which is most of the time because it's not about you, but not make some conclusion about the person's worth. Does that make sense? Excellent. All right. So now let's try a meditation. You up for it? I have to find it somewhere. I had them all in order, and then of course they're not. Okay, I have one on that kind of continues on from the idea of equanimity. Does that sound good? I also have one on clarity of the mind. Is that a yes to, you want me to make the decision? I'll make it. So equalizing self and others. Okay. So what do we do first?
Set an intention.
So yeah, so try to remember, you know, kind of refresh your intention from the beginning, you know, if you don't have a nice fresh one handy, but, you know, just, you know, think, okay, I'm giving this meditation a try because, you know, I want to learn how to use this tool, you know, it might help my mind, it might help my wisdom, you know, that kind of thing. And I want to do it not just to benefit myself, but to benefit the others around me, and hopefully it'll ripple out to just keep benefiting others. Okay, so take a moment to think about that. And take a moment to get your posture comfortable, you know, kind of, you want to be upright, awake. You know, tilt your head slightly so it's gazing downward, with your lips touching, but you're not holding your mouth tight or your teeth tightly closed together. Placing the tongue behind the front teeth, the top teeth. Your shoulders even and relaxed, or as relaxed as you know how. Your back straight. The feet on the floor if you're sitting on a chair. The right hand on top of the left. Perhaps the thumbs touching. Or whatever is most comfortable for you. And then just take a moment to bring yourself inward. By focusing on your breath. Just noticing the sensation of the air going in and out at the tip of your nose. And remember, at any time, if something I say resonates with you, you can just pause there. Stop listening to me. And if your mind drags you to some other topic elsewhere, the past or the future, just try to remember your motivation to meditate. And bring your attention back to your breath to anchor your mind. So last week we talked about how friend, enemy, and stranger are just labels. They're just all sentient beings and they are equal. How we and others are equal. We are equal because we all want happiness and we all want to avoid suffering. We're also equal because the whole discrimination of self and others is an arbitrary distinction. It really depends upon which side you're looking at it from. This is me, that's you, but from your side, this is you and that's me. Self and others are dependent. We're not isolated, independent units. We become self simply because of discrimination of others. Although we have this feeling of me existing independently, it's dependent on the discrimination of other. Self and others aren't two distinct categories like a chair and a table, or like the color yellow and the color blue. Yellow can't be blue and blue can't be yellow. A chair can't be a table and a table can't be a chair. The discrimination of self and others isn't like that, because self and others just depends upon viewpoint. From one viewpoint, this is I, and that is other. This one's happiness is most important, and the other's happiness isn't. But from the other viewpoint, you say I, and your happiness is more important than my happiness. I becomes you, and therefore less important. It is like this side of the room and that side of the room. It just depends on which side you're sitting in, which side becomes this and which side becomes that. If you move to the other side, then that side of the room becomes this side, and this side becomes that side. It's only because we've identified strongly with our side that we feel that others' suffering is less important than our own. And it's an erroneous perception. The right hand helps the left hand without making a big deal out of it. If you bang the left hand with a hammer, the right hand doesn't pause to say, oh, you're so stupid. Your suffering isn't my problem, so I'm not going to help you. It just jumps in to help. We can help our own future self because we consider who I am today and who I am tomorrow as part of the same continuum. They aren't exactly the same, but they're part of the same continuum. Similarly, the two hands aren't exactly the same, but they are part of the same collection. So we just help them. But we can quit separating self and other, thinking, this is me, independent here, and that's you. So your problem is your problem, and my problem is my problem, and my problem is most important. The suffering of self and the suffering of other exist by being merely labeled self and other. We can quit thinking of the suffering of others as separate from ourselves and begin thinking of all suffering as our own. But our doubting mind might say, yes, but how can I really think of another's body as my own? And how can I think of somebody else's suffering as my own? How is that possible? You're telling me to help others the same way I help myself. How can I do this? So just when did this body become yours? It started as the coming together of an egg and sperm that belonged to your parents. Half the genes are from your dad, the other half are from your mom. All the other atoms and molecules are from all the muesli and milk, oranges and broccoli and whatever else you have eaten your whole life. Genetically, the body belongs to others. And the materials of what it is composed of, all the food we ate, belongs to others. Other people gave those things. Whose body is it? Just as we immediately project a thing when we purchase it and identify it as mine, we can immediately protect all sentient beings as soon as we identify them as mine. Since your I and my I are the same in wanting only happiness and not wanting suffering, we could see all sentient beings as I and protect all sentient beings as mine. In the same way one protects one's entire body when only one part is threatened, sentient beings could protect all sentient beings when only one sentient being is threatened. To cling to the body and mind of this instant and the next as being the same thing is a mistaken conception of permanence, nothing more. In the same way, to cling to my parts, but not cling to their parts, to protect my parts and not protect their parts is a mistaken concept of separateness. So now bring your attention back to the breath, going in and out of the body, either as the belly rises and falls, or as the air enters and exits your nose. Check in with the body, observe if any spots are tense or relaxed or whatever sensation arises. Just observe it. Then check in with your mind. and feel good that you sat through this meditation, listened to the meditation, in whatever way your efforts went. And dedicate your efforts to be a benefit to yourself and others around you. And when you're ready, just gently open your eyes. So this is an example of a meditation on a lot of different points, right? So it's one that you can easily just take part of and really examine it. Really see, do I believe this or not? How can I think about this? Contemplate on it more deeply, because part of us intellectually understands this idea of everything's relative, self and other, tall and small, or short, I guess, near and far. But when we really look at what the consequence of that relativeness is to how we value things, so we really want to look at how our labels, our mere labels, like friend, enemy, stranger, like self, other, affects how we care for them or think of them or treat them, and whether it's justified or not, whether it really works out well. It isn't that the teachings are suggesting that we take care of everybody the same way we take care of our family. No, we have certain responsibilities to our family. We have responsibilities to our employer. We have responsibilities to our community, all of these things. So we have different roles, and, so we behave accordingly, trying to do the best we can with those roles. But it is about recognizing that who's in our lives and who's not in our lives is fluid. It's always changing. We change jobs, we change partners, our kids grow up, we get old, all sorts of things change, and how we interact in the world changes. But it doesn't have to change, our feeling of concern and compassion for all sentient beings. In the same way, we develop real affection for our pets, we can, understand that all sentient beings, all living beings on the planet, can be cared for. That the extinction of species matters. In the sense, but they too are impermanent. We're impermanent. Everything's impermanent. So it's a matter of just really taking points like this and trying to really question this sense of the way we treat self and other, as if we're somehow entirely different things. And how that often is an obstacle to how we respond to others or to each other. And is that helpful or not? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it can also be an obstacle to meditation.
What can?
A lack of equanimity, a lack of wanting to help all sentient beings.
Okay, you've lost me. Try again.
Well, it just seems like lack of compassion and lack of equanimity would make meditation harder. It makes it harder for me.
So what I'm hearing is that, if you don't have a mind of equanimity or a mind of compassion, then it makes it harder to actually do meditation, to meditate. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So am I hearing that bringing those thoughts to mind, bringing the thought of all sentient beings, wanting to meditate for the benefit of all sentient beings helps you actually do it?
Yes.
Yeah. And this is why it can be helpful. It's okay to start with doing things for a small circle of concern. If the thought of, benefiting all sentient beings just seems kind of an outrageous idea, you still want to try to practice that thought, just to kind of leave it as a possibility, but you can, focus on, like I certainly started this process of wanting to just treat the people who were around me with more respect, kindness, generosity, whatever. I mean, I wanted to be a kinder person, and the people that mattered were the people around me. But it didn't matter whether I knew them or not. It could be at the cashier at the store. It's about, just the interactions with whomever I came into contact with. So, so when we try to generate our motivation and our intention, you think about, okay, why do I even show up here? Why am I trying to learn to meditate? What's in it for me? What motivates me to do this? So that you can strengthen your resolve to follow through with the meditation. So if it's, thinking of, okay, this, I agree that taking care of my mind has an impact on the world. And so I really want to work on the tools that might benefit my mind in order to benefit all sentient beings. Then that's fabulous. Can't quite get there, then you think about, your family, your friends, and you just keep enlarging that group because, of course, the people in those groups change. Any other thoughts, questions?
Robert has a question, Venerable Tendron.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Actually, that was interesting what Jack said, because I don't like what you like the meditation we just did. I mean, it's true. I mean, self is just all that's very true. But for me, the hardest part is not so much the meditation, it's the motivation. I was like, what? I mean, do I really I want to just do it and skip over that part, which I know obviously I'm just being honest. I've been waiting to address this, but I know this is very important, that part of it. But to me, it's like, all right, I just want to do that, and then just get into the meditation, which ties in with what Jack says, like the whole world. I don't know. I just want to sit down and watch my breath, and so I really struggle with that. Like the motivation part to me is like, which I don't really believe in that word anyways. I think you just have to do things and not worry about motivating. In general, I'm not talking about this, because obviously for thousands of years they've been doing this. There must be a reason for it, but I struggle with that, which I think that ties into what Jack was saying, because that's trouble for me.
Well, and that's good to know. That's something we have to observe about ourselves. Why do I do stuff? This is just an opportunity to choose why we're doing something. And the more we know why we're doing something, that can really help us complete tasks or not resent doing them, or, think, hey, I've been doing this for you, and now, what's in it for me? It's important for us to know what's in it for me before we, and of course it will change. At first, it may just be curiosity. you know, or it's just like, well, I've heard this is a good thing to do. You know, my partner wants me to try it out. You know, I'm kind of curious, whatever. I mean, that's fine. Curiosity is just fine. Sharing the experience with someone else is just fine. You know, there's no bad reason, you know. Well, I guess it could be. I mean, we could really stretch it. I want to develop mind control so I can take over the world. So, you know, but it's about, yeah.
I'm sorry, but is that like, I enjoy it. I don't mind. I like the meditation. I just not a big fan of the motivation part of it. So
Yeah, well, keep trying. It's
okay.
just, you know, I mean, you just try it because you don't know what the benefit might be until you learn how to do it.
All right. Yes.
And it may not have any benefit to you. I don't know.
Oh, I see.
But I think that, you know, a motivation's incredibly important for when times are difficult. You know, when we feel like we don't have enough time to do this, when we feel like, you know, the world's crashing around us, you know, if we don't have a motivation for why we do it in the first place, when it gets inconvenient to do it, we won't do it. And then what would the benefit that we have on our mind from doing a daily practice or a regular practice, we lose it.
But doesn't that come between discipline? If you have the discipline, not trying to, I mean, like I said, they've been doing motivation for thousands of years, so there's a reason for it. But if you just discipline to do it, sometimes I do things I don't want to do. I'm just disciplined to do it.
Well, you want to look at that though.
Okay.
Because we want to observe. Yes, we do things, we just do it. We've been disciplined to do it, but we're adults now. You know, the more we consciously choose our actions, the more likely our actions will serve, you know, our values. If we don't check in with that, you know, if we just do something because I've been told to do it, you know, that serves a very narrow purpose for us. So it's really helpful to check up to see, well, why am I really doing this? Now, you know, it can be simple things like I go to work because I like to eat. You know, I haven't figured out another way to be able to put food in my mouth if I don't work for money. You know. So we just, you know, it's just about, you know, understanding, because a lot of people can get stuck in when times are tough with the idea of having to do something. And so if we can really find why we choose to do things, that can help us make sure we're living the life that according to our values. Does that make sense? Takes a while. Yep.
Yeah, it vaguely makes sense. So that's okay. It's good and all that you do it, but like to really think about why. Yeah, because I always just dismiss the word motivation in general. Like I just think like you just got to do it. Okay, so well, why do I have to do it? I guess.
Yep.
All right, so it's okay to struggle. Is that common to struggle with the motivation part of
Yep.
it, and enjoy the actual practice itself?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Because it's putting your needs in words. And some of us aren't so good at that.
Huh. Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So,
Rebecca, did you want?
yeah, and then Judy has something, but so I don't know. I guess I was just thinking about it. I guess also it kind of depends on why are you meditating. You know, some people meditate for relaxation, and you know, obviously this class that's not really the track of this. But I think I've known people, and I don't know whether they had a motivation or not, but that have gotten sort of attached to meditation, especially single pointed meditation, where it's more of like they enjoy the meditation and get quite good at it, but maybe it's not then.
Again, what are they getting good at?
single point, it being able to hold concentration. But I mean, from my understanding from teachings, that's not really the point of, at least as a Buddhist, is why you're doing this. You know, that the single pointedness is to be able to then do analytical and hold objects of analysis. So I guess for me, like having a clear motivation, but I guess that's like with anything that you're doing in your life, knowing why you're doing it is useful. But
yeah. And you're right. I mean, you know, it's like there is a purpose to meditation in the Buddhist path. And it's not just to be able to, you know, and some people think that they've got single pointed concentration, and what they really have is a dullness that just is zoned out. And that, you know, that turns out to be beneficial to their body and is a rest for their mind, in the sense of just sort of like an escape, you know? So, but I would never put on my CV, oh, I can concentrate for 22 minutes on my breath, because who cares? I mean, so that's, you know, it's really not, in Buddhism, that's not a purpose of a spiritual or action. You know, the purpose is to somehow, you know, understand. I mean, for the, you know, in Buddhism, everything's about the mind. The mind drives all our actions of speech and body. And so we really want to become familiar with what's going on in the mind, so we can check up if our habits of mind are going in a direction that's useful or not, you know. And meditation helps us be more observant about what's going on in our mind. And some of our clues start with noticing what's going on in the body, you know, but the mind's always going. As Veronica said, you know, even if you don't think, you know, you don't speak really fast, you don't feel like you can keep up with other people's, you know, thoughts really, you know, but we all are thinking, you know, I mean, the teachings say 65 in a finger snap. That's how many thoughts in a finger snap. Our minds are quite skilled at awareness. I mean, think about it. In every moment, we're aware of the colors around us, the sounds, the temperatures against the skin, the pressure against the skin, you know, any itches in the body, you know. Unless we are really focused, we're kind of can be pulled around by all these awarenesses going on. You know? So being able to decide what we're going to focus on, and then focus on it. Now, in Buddhism, we have sort of a list of things to focus on, because we're, you know, the teachings are all about helping us understand what are the causes of suffering and what are the causes of happiness, so that we can implement them. You know, so we can test it out, you know, investigate and see if there's any truth to it. To see if there's any truth to, you know, making a choice about how I respond is better than just reacting.
And Judy had a question, Venerable
Oh,
Tendron.
yes. Judy.
Okay. For myself, that's why I like the word intention instead of motivation. Motivation sometimes means like I'm forcing myself into something, but my intention is hopefully will be have a result in the end, okay, and that to be you know, the end of suffering. So it's not, I'm much more familiar and much more comfortable saying what is my intention, not my motivation. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And the teachings on karma, intention includes motivation, and in fact includes like 4 parts. So it's just a, you know, and it's just jargon, you know, so it's just a matter of just really looking at sort of like the reason, and then what we're actually going to do. You know, it's just putting two parts together. You know, so I'm going to meditate because I want to end suffering. So I'm motivated by, you know, trying to discover the causes of suffering so that I can end them. And I'm going to meditate for the next, you know, 7 minutes in order to do so. So it's really important, but if you observe that thinking about motivation just means like, oh, you know, I have to do this or something, you know, you want to, yeah, you don't, that's not the reason behind it. So, but it's really just, it's to help us understand that we have choices. Anybody else?
So when we're doing that type of analytical meditation, I mean, it was really helpful when you were reading or talking through during the meditation, but I mean, if we're doing it ourselves, like what do we say or what thoughts do we have? Do you know what
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is why you start, you know, you might start with a script, you know, and you read the script. But what you know, but when you're reading a text, say, you know, and you're reading a list of points, you know, it says, oh, when you do this, you know, blah, blah, blah. You can also just create what you want to look at, what you want to contemplate. Now, some things we may not need a list for. What kinds of things are we extremely familiar with?
So meaning we read the script before the meditation or
like I was telling Robert earlier, you can read it during. You just have it there for yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm finding I'm very familiar with impatience.
Yeah. Okay. I am too. We share that. So, you know, so that's one of those things where we may be so familiar with impatience, and we may have already figured out that it's not helping us at all. You know, it doesn't help our relationships. It doesn't feel good to feel impatient, whatever. So we can look at the reasons why we don't like it. Oh, my body always feels, and I feel like I'm just going to jump down someone's throat. You know, you can go through the list of what you've seen or the disadvantages of being impatient without any help from a book. You know, then you can, but perhaps you have more trouble with the benefits of patience. So you might need to look at a book and to read, you know, what does Shantideva say about patience? What is he? So we kind of get some idea. What does Lama Tsongkhapa say about patience? You know, and we look at what the advantages of patience might be. You know, so, you know, so we, in our own words, we develop these reasons why we might want to cultivate patience and, you know, to interrupt our habit of impatience. And we contemplate those, and you know, and we want to think about them, you know, so you think about, okay, the last time I was at such and such, you know, I really lost my patience with so-and-so. And so you think about that. Well, what did it feel like? What was in my mind? Was I comfortable? Was I agitated? Did I feel like I was going to jump out of my skin? What did that feel like? Oh, and then I said something. I made it clear I was impatient. What did that feel like? How did the other person look? Was I comfortable with their response? You know, so you examine what happens when we have a mind arise and we act from it that we think might not be skillful. You know, it's hard to do in the moment because it goes by really quickly. But it's good to kind of go, oh, I'm going to look at this later because it was really not pleasant. Or say you go to the food bank You volunteer at the food bank, you go and you have it, you know, and it was hard work and da da da, but you really felt good at the end of the day. So you think about that. Gee, when I'm not thinking about myself and I'm thinking about others, and I do a task that actually might help others, you know, I like it. I felt good in my body. I was glad to help these others who were helping. You know, it was a pleasant experience. Maybe I'll want to repeat that. So we just examine our experiences and see if they lead us to different conclusions from the way we normally act. You know, we have habits of doing things certain ways. And if we can start imagining, okay, what if I didn't do it that way? Does that make sense? Thanks, Faye. I'm so glad someone responds. It's very, you know, I don't hear anything, you know, I don't hear you going on, maybe, you know, y'all are all muted. And your faces are the size of a stamp. Yeah, Robert, Veronica.
I understood what the analytical meditation is. It's just when you said that we have to examine those experiences to see how we responded. Typically, when that happens, it comes with a lot of emotions. So I guess what we're trying to do is examine this, I mean, without emotions, because otherwise then I'm not gonna be doing a good job.
I understand. Because sometimes what we are examining are difficult situations, circumstances, thoughts, beliefs, and it can be painful or it can be joyous. It can be all kinds of things, you know? So we don't want to rush through the feelings, you know, because sometimes we just have to sit with the feeling. So if a strong feeling arises, pain, hurt, sadness, you know, whatever it is, it's really important to just pause there, experience that feeling. Don't feed it. Don't let your thoughts just make it drag out. Just, oh, I'm feeling sad right now. It's okay to cry.
Yeah, it is a very hard exercise because I have tried it myself, and sometimes I have to stop it because then I'm gonna get sad and then I don't want to get there. But
so then you don't want to what?
I don't want to get sad or you know, feed the sadness of
okay.
that.
Well, but wait a minute, Veronica. So my point is that just because the feeling arises doesn't mean it will stay.
Okay.
It's just, oh, I feel sad. You don't need to create a story or go, well, it's because I was thinking about this, you know, blah, blah, blah. You just experience the sadness and notice when it passes.
Okay. Yes, I guess, like I was saying, when I do it for myself, it's a little bit more difficult. I can do it with Bianca because she comes home with the stories about the friend who said that and whatever. So I can see all that story and remain objective from afar and try to help her, you know, with her feelings. When it is my own feelings, then it gets a little bit more challenging.
Of course it does. Yeah, because you're experiencing the feeling. You're not just watching a movie. So one of the things that can help, first of all, is not try to crush your feelings. If they do arise, you just go, oh, I'm sad. And if you can't not feed it, then you may need to get up and go take a walk or do something else. But you can also remind yourself it's not happening right now. You're just contemplating, you're just thinking about a situation. So it's a memory of something that is the condition for the sadness. Okay? So if you can, try to be mentally just kind of, okay, you know, like, okay, I'm going to look at this as if my friend is telling me this story. Give yourself some distance. You may not be able to do that with everything that comes up right away. You know, you may have to go through a period of time where you just experience the sadness. It's the truth of suffering, you know? So it's a skill to be able to experience a strong feeling like sadness without feeding it or without trying to suppress it. You know, we either want to run away or we use our talking about it as a way of distancing ourselves from the feeling. So we tell a story in our mind. It's another way we can escape. You know, or we just feed it and then we think we're going to drown. You know, and so we just have to go through some of this before we can have space to be able to step back a little bit, because there's not, whether you feel sad or even whether you feel angry, impatient, greedy, jealous, all of those things, when they've arisen, your reasoning mind is not going to be available. What's available is that emotion. So it's, that's why we want to just experience it and let it pass. And if you're not ready to go any further with it, then you don't go back to that story or whatever the memory, whatever it is, But we don't want to keep the habit of suppressing it or feeding going. It's more of just being able to just, oh, I'm feeling scared. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling grief. So that we can just learn to tolerate these states. We don't have to feel bad about it. We don't have to feel guilty about it. We don't feel like we're doing something wrong. It's none of that. I mean, it's just experience it. And if we don't feed it, it will pass. That doesn't mean all of a sudden we just feel great. It's the becoming familiar with what's going on in our mind is not always pleasant. Sometimes it's quite raw and painful. That's why when people go on retreat, and they're so shocked that they're having a terrible time, but all sorts of stuff's coming up. Meditation's not about just putting Band-Aids on your mind. It's about really being able to become familiar with what's going on in the mind. And then when you're calm, be able to bring your reasoning to look at situations. Because let's face it, no amount of wisdom changes, the experience of suffering. We can transform our mind. We can quit creating the cause for suffering. But when we're in a moment of suffering, it's already there. We can't talk our way out of it. And we wouldn't want to. Because we really want to understand how we suffer. This helps us try to develop tools that will reduce our suffering. And one of those tools is that meditation can help eventually with being able to step back and putting some distance between the event and yourself so that you can look at it with some analysis. So we don't take everything that happens to us very personally. So we can learn that this, that part of the difficulty, is that we have faulty ways of thinking that land us into really suffering states. And that takes a long time to work with. But it's definitely not, meditation's definitely not about just experiencing pleasant moments. In fact, I would say for me, there are very few like that. I don't have many meditations that are like that. What's interesting though, is I like meditating now. I like sitting, contemplating on topics. Doesn't mean I actually enjoy the experience. It's just more, I know that it benefits me. It helps me in the moment when I'm in the thick of something to be able to handle it in a different way and not just let my habit energy take over. Is this helping, making any sense? Thank you.
A lot of sense. Thank you. I feel like your words have so much wisdom. When you say that meditation helps you to see what happened during suffering, not in an emotional state, but with some distance, is it because you can do that in a state of calm, or because, because when you're thinking about like an event that happened, for example, it's hard to, it feels like it's happening, but how do you see it as if you're like looking at something else?
That's the advantage of bringing the situation to the cushion, so to speak. In other words, it's not happening right now. So you're really looking at, okay, what did they say? What was the circumstances? Who was there? How did I feel physically? What were the components? Was I reactive, not reactive? Then we can really look at the pieces in there and see, oh, I can see how, as soon as they said such and such, I started to worry. And that, led to some assumptions on my part and da-da-da. So we can just kind of see how things unfolded for us. And then we get a better idea of how, we're reactive as opposed to choosing how to respond. And we may not even, we're so often reactive to things like body language, tone of voice, that we don't actually see or hear what's going on. Oh, I read this thing today, not today, but there was a study done in the 60s where people who had, really a severe form of epilepsy, so they were seizing all the time. So the scientists, they decided to try to split their brain. You know how the brain has a brainstem that connects the two halves, and so they split the corpus callosum in half so that the brains were separated, and it did help with the seizures. But it gave the doctors this opportunity to really discover how the two halves of the brain work differently, because because of the brainstem, they share all this information. But it's clear that the brain supports the parts of the brain support certain activities. And so what they found, and we all, hear about this now, it's old knowledge, that the left brain is really involved in our interpretation, our evaluation, our words, our thoughts about things. So they were able, for these patients to, they would tell the right brain, I don't know how they did this exactly, without the left brain knowing, to get up and walk to the window. then they would ask the left brain why it got up and walked to the window. And instead of saying, I don't know why, you know, it said, oh, because I wanted to do da da da. It just made up something. You know, it didn't hear anybody tell it to walk, you know, to stand up and walk over. It just totally made it up. And no matter what the doctors would show them, you know, whether it was pictures or instructions or whatever, every time, even though the left brain had no clue why the right brain was doing something, it just made it up. So apparently we have a strong need to explain things for things to make sense, even if there's no basis at all. So we need to understand just how influenced we are by our filters, by what we bring to the situation, what we observe. And according to the Buddha, our habits of observation, what we're attracted to, what we're averse to, are habits that have been developed since beginningless time. So if we, you know, so when we walk into a room, our very observation is being affected by our habits. So what we experience isn't, you know, objectivity doesn't arise because we filter everything. We notice the things either we like or don't like. You know, we really evaluate, and if something doesn't make sense, it's likely we'll just fill in the gaps. You know how our eyeballs have a center with nothing in it? And we just fill it in? We do. It's just kind of interesting, isn't it? So this notion that things don't appear to us in the way that they are, science tells us that all the time. You know, so being, you know, being certain that we are experiencing, you know, someone's nasty look, or they're being inconsiderate, or they're being, you know, that they're selfish, or they're, you know, whatever, you know, really may not be true at all. So we really want to start being familiar with what we are reacting to, so we can check up, you know, so we can learn how to step back and, you know, because, you know, so as soon as you feel that, whatever your body's clues are, like for me, it's definitely a catch, you know, with my diaphragm, I guess. So I don't really know the parts of my body. It's not so swift. Oh, so much for my studies of health education. But the, you know, that catch, I know there's something I don't like. You know, and it may be based on anxiety, it might be fear, it may be greed, it may be whatever it is, but it's something I'm not too happy with. And so that's my clue. I need to step back and try to just, you know, listen to words, not tone, to listen to, you know, to let go of the body language, the tone, you know, and try to just, you know, take my ego out and just try to be present for what's happening so that I'm not reactive. You know, I don't know if you've ever realized that, oh, you respond to somebody because they sound just like your mom or your dad. You know, they have the same accent or the same intonation, or they just, you know, they word things the same way. And, you know, so if your boss is like that and, you know, your relationship with your dad wasn't all that grand, you know, you may have trouble with that person. So it's really worthwhile noticing these cues to understand, okay, this is you know, an obstacle to me actually, you know, accurately assessing the information that's coming in, because I have an extra piece here, and we have many of them. So it's good to get familiar with what's going on in our mind, to notice where it jumps to, you know, because we may be just adding all sorts of stuff in that wasn't there. And this can really harm our relationships. And just knowing, you know, that, you know, if we walk into a store and we know we're in a hurry, we need to recognize, though, we've made a choice to go anyway, even though we don't really have the time. It's not someone else's fault that it's taking longer than we want it to. We didn't have to walk in. You know, we could have walked in and go, no, the lines are too long, and walked out. So we need to understand this idea of choice and be, you know, taking responsibility for what we're, you know, the situation we're in, you know, and make a different decision if it's, you know, if we're becoming reactive to it. Does that make sense? Okay. And meditation can help us with this. So if we have a particularly uncomfortable or tense or fearful, or not even, it doesn't have to be particularly that way, but a situation where we really wish it had gone differently, you know, we try to bring it to our quiet time and kind of look at it. Really investigate what happened, what we thought, what did we really hear, you know? And then we kind of think, okay, how could that have gone differently? How can I help myself handle those similar situations differently? And all of that is sort of an analytical meditation. It's becoming familiar with what's going on, then using your wisdom, your reasoning to figure out, you know, what you could do differently. We can't control others. We really can't control outcomes, but we can control our part of it eventually with time and practice. Yes.
This is interesting because I'll almost a lot of times I've thought while listening since I've been coming in, perspective, it's almost like a weight. It's like you want to just, all these views we've accumulated years and years, like I want to get rid of these, you know, like I wonder what other people think sometimes, because it's like it's oppressive almost, being trapped by all these. So I guess with meditation and many years, you'll never get, I guess, well, right, I guess it's oppressive, no? I mean, it really is oppressive that we're trapped by our own perspective. Oh, we're not trapped.
We just feel trapped, you know, and so this is the point of meditating, or in becoming skilled at being able to observe ourselves. So we just, you know, we just become skilled at it. So all day long we can notice, and then we can choose. We can go, I'm not following that habit, you know, I'm not, or like, I used to be like completely paralyzed by guilt. So I just stayed a terrible person, you know, so, you know, when I decided, okay, I'm going to change now, and guilt was not helping me. Every time it would come up, I just, thanks a lot, thanks for sharing, I'm not listening because you don't help, you know? And I had to do that for like 365 days, about 24/7. I mean, it was really hard work. I was highly motivated though. This is why motivation can help, you know? It's amazing what we're capable of when we're motivated, you know? So, you know, it's just, you know, but it's this understanding that the good news is we don't have to master these things to see change. It's really just about going, oh, that's what I'm doing. Some things just fall away naturally because, oh, that's just what my mom did. I'm not going to do that. You know, you have no investment in it. So, you know, you just stop it. Usually that's about things like, you know, insisting on cleaning a self-cleaning oven with chemicals or something. You know, it's not very important. But the point is that, you know, it's just, it's really about observing and then learning that we can choose to act differently. But that choice will require some, what you choose to do will need some practice. You have to become familiar with whatever it is that you would like to do instead. Okay, so let's end with we're going to end with a clarity of mind meditation, since those are harder. So, don't worry if it makes no sense to you, but maybe this will help, maybe not. So again, try to shake off your fatigue. Get comfortable. Oh. So just have your eyes either open a little bit or closed. Breathe into your shoulders so they can relax. Try to have your back straight, your chin tucked in a little. Just be aware that you're breathing. And just take a moment to do the 9-round breathing. So you're going to try to first breathe in through your right nostril and exhale through your left nostril 3 times. And then breathe in through your left nostril and breathe out through your right nostril 3 times. And then breathe in evenly with both nostrils 3 times. And then repeat this 1 time. Breathing in with the right, exhaling with the left. Breathing in through the left, exhaling right. And then evenly through both nostrils. Then you might think about something positive, like I'm going to do this meditation in order to work on my mind, to be a more positive, beneficial person for others. May this meditation help me bring more peace and happiness to others. And bring your awareness back to the breath. And just let your attention float on the breath, similar to the way you would float on the surface of the ocean, where they're just gentle waves coming and going. Stay floating on the surface, flowing with the wave, coming and going. Just letting your attention rest on the gentle rolling rhythm of your breathing. Now try to move your attention away from the breathing to the mind itself. The mind that's just aware of breathing. So now the object of your awareness is awareness itself, that which is observing the breath, experiencing the breath. If this is difficult, imagine that you're staring up at the sky above the ocean. It is completely clear and free of clouds. Concentrate on this vast, unobstructed emptiness. Imagine that it flows down and embraces you. Embraces you and your surroundings. Everything becomes empty like space. Try to get a sense of how your mind is like that. It's like this clear, vast, spacious sky. There's no need to think about anything during this meditation. There's no need to wonder about what is the mind. Just simply observe it. Its clear nature, which is like infinite empty space. Whatever arises, thoughts, memories, images, sounds, sensations in the body. Just think that these are just like clouds passing through this space, the clear sky of your mind. Let them come and let them go. They are only momentary. They're not solid. They just come and go. Let them go and return your awareness to the mind itself, which is like the clear, spacious sky. Our awareness is like the sky, not the clouds. And just dedicate the positive energy, your positive efforts for trying this meditation. May it ripen to benefit others. May it bring greater peace to your mind and to benefit other beings. So now bring your attention back to the group. So I thought, any questions before we finish? Okay. So I thought we could end by reciting the 3 principles of the path together. So, good. Let me share it. Okay, so this short text is written by Lama Tsongkhapa, who was one of the main teachers in this tradition. So that's probably all I need to say about that at this moment. And so in the typical Tibetan style, first, whenever they write anything, they first express their respect to their teachers or to bodhisattvas, and then they tell their promise to complete this text. So it's just, this is just standard. But then this is one of those, short texts that you can recite or get familiar with to get familiar with the path. I bow down to my perfect gurus. The essential meaning of the victorious one's teachings, the path praised by all the holy victors and their children, the gateway of the fortunate ones desiring liberation, this I shall try to explain as much as I can. Those who are not attached to the pleasures of circling in samsara, who strive to make freedom and endowments meaningful, who entrust themselves to the path pleasing the victorious ones. You fortunate ones, listen with a calm mind. Without the complete intention, definitely to be free from circling, there is no way to pacify attachment seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of circling. Also, by craving for cyclic existence, embodied beings are continuously bound. Therefore, at the very beginning, seek renunciation. Freedom and endowments are difficult to find, and life has no time to spare. By gaining familiarity with this, attraction to the appearances of this life is reversed. By thinking over and over again that actions and their effects are unbetraying, and repeatedly contemplating the miseries of cyclic existence, attraction to the appearance of future lives is reversed. By having trained in that way, there is no arising, even for a second, of attraction to the perfections of cyclic existence, and all day and night, the intention-seeking liberation arises. Then the thought of renunciation has been generated. Even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, it does not become the cause of the perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by the tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping, completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance, endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, thinking that all mothers are in such a condition, generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. In short, if like the mother whose cherished son has fallen into a pit of fire and who experiences even 1 second of his suffering as an unbearable eternity, your reflection on the sufferings of all mother sentient beings has made it impossible for you to bear their suffering for even 1 second, and the wish seeking enlightenment for their sake arises without effort. Then you have realized the supreme precious mind of enlightenment. Without the wisdom realizing ultimate reality, even though you have generated renunciation in the mind of enlightenment, you cannot cut the root cause of circling. Therefore, attempt the method to realize dependent arising. One who sees the cause and effect of all phenomena of both cyclic existence and the state beyond sorrow as forever unbetraying, and for whom any object trusted in by the grasping mind has completely disappeared, has at that time entered the path pleasing the Buddhas. If the appearance of dependent relation, which is unbetraying, is accepted separately from emptiness, and as long as they are not seen as separate, then one has not realized the Buddha's intent. If these two realizations are happening simultaneously, without alternation, and from merely seeing dependent relation as completely unbetraying, the definite ascertainment comes that completely destroys the way all objects are apprehended as truly existent. At that time, the analysis of the ultimate view is complete. Furthermore, appearance eliminates the extreme of existence, and emptiness eliminates the extreme of non-existence. If you realize how emptiness manifests in the manner of cause and effect, then you are not captivated by wrong notions holding extreme views. In this way, you realize exactly the vital points of the three principal aspects of the path, resort to seeking solitude, generate the power of effort, and quickly accomplish your final goal, my child. So that's just a little taste of why we need to study. So, because there's lots of jargon and it's and there's a lot of meaning behind the words that when you first encounter them may seem like an exercise in getting depressed. So, but it's really not meant for that. So you want to really think about how, our suffering according to the Buddha, our suffering comes from our unskillful habits of mind, from our misunderstanding of how things exist. And the more familiar we become with our mind and recognize our unskillful habits, the more we'll reduce our suffering right away. So with that thought, anyway, so please bring your questions with you next week. I think next week is the last week of How to Meditate. So that's all I know. Any thoughts, Rebecca? Do you have anything you want to say?
No, just to remind everybody that on Saturday we have our last scheduled teaching with Venerable Amy, Saturday morning at 10. And then on Sunday morning we have meditation with Jackie, followed by class with you.
Okay, so yeah, that's all I can think of. Okay, so thank you very much for your efforts. I hope that you have a good night's rest and a meaningful day tomorrow, maybe even tonight, whatever. So thanks very much.
Tendron.